Good afternoon. Now, I know I said I wouldn't be making any more videos about the Lucy Letby case, but, well, I said I probably wouldn't be making any more videos about the Lucy Letby case, partly because I feel that my work is done, and I know she's still in prison, but my work is done. Because the reason I did the very first video that I did is I wanted to draw people's attention to the discrepancy, one particular discrepancy in her case, when Dowie Evans said that babies don't just collapse. And my personal experience of being in a neonatal ward with my daughter for 8 weeks was that babies do just collapse. It does actually happen. And he was lying. So that's what prompted me to do the video. And also, obviously, I went to YouTube because I, first of all, posted on Facebook, and just like there was tumbleweed, nobody was interested. I thought, yeah, maybe this isn't the place to discuss the Lucy Letby case. And I just wanted people just to be aware of how serious an inconsistency Dowie Evans' claim was, and how much of a lie it was. It was a complete and utter lie. And I couldn't just let it sit there and fester it in my head without doing something about it. But I've done it. I've done more than just that. I've obviously spent the last 18 months or so doing lots and lots of videos, 377 videos to be precise. And I think I covered as much as I possibly could. Now, people are still doing videos about Lucy Letby, and good for them. I mean, why not? Because, you know, we need to keep her name in the press. We need to keep her name on the tip of everybody's tongue. And we need to embarrass the establishment, because it looks like that's the only way we're going to get the establishment to really do the right thing. We need them to do the right thing. But it just occurred to me today, just something, I was watching a video about something else, another crime completely. And it occurred to me something. My involvement in the Lucy Letby case started with David Davies talking about an article in the New Yorker. And one thing that made me take note was the fact that it was an article in the New Yorker. Now, this is a publication in America. Why would a publication in America be concerned about a British nurse who's accused of being the most prolific serial killer, or the second most prolific serial killer in the UK? So I thought, yeah, that's very important to know why the New Yorker was so concerned about the case. So I read the article in the New Yorker. I used a VPN. I've said this many times. I used a VPN sometime in May 2024. And I read that article on a Friday evening, and I was horrified when I read it. I couldn't believe what I was reading. And what's significant, and what this video is about, is the fact that it was in the New Yorker. Of all the publications for me to have to read to find out that there was a miscarriage of justice in this case, it wasn't the Daily Mail, it wasn't the Sun, it wasn't the Mirror, it wasn't the Telegraph, the Times, and all the British newspapers. It was none of the British newspapers, not even the Guardian. At that point, not even the Guardian. I think all of those publications were calling her a murderer and were basically bashing her and not being very objective. So it's a good thing that the first article I ever read was in a more objective publication, because, you know, everybody is now jumping on the Lucy Letby is innocent bandwagon, including some of the newspapers I've mentioned. But they weren't concerned about justice when she first went to prison. And the New Yorker was concerned before she went to prison. The New Yorker was writing articles about her case before the trial, or during the trial. Maybe not, I don't know if they were writing before the trial, but during the trial they were writing. And because they could, because it was in America, and so they're allowed to do that. Or in theory, they're allowed to do that. I suppose the British establishment could get court injunctions in America preventing them from doing that. But they didn't. Instead, what they did is they got the article blocked in the UK. Now, why this is important to me is I was thinking of something today. I was thinking to myself, well, would the American establishment, would the American authorities ever investigate a British crime? Because we know that Cheshire Constabulary have absolutely botched the investigation into Lucy Letby. But what if another investigation was conducted by another police force or another organization that has the remit to investigate crime, but it wasn't a British organization, it was an American organization. Now, the FBI, they have their faults. Come on. Look at Kennedy. Look at how they investigated the Kennedy case, as in JFK. They've botched things in the past. Let's not pretend that they're perfect. But so is Scotland Yard. But interestingly, I thought to myself, let me see if there's been a precedent for this. Has the FBI ever investigated crimes in the UK in the past? And I do believe that in the past, in some investigations, the British establishment or the British police have called in the FBI, or maybe the British government have called in the FBI at various points. And so it is possible. And so I thought, let me look on FBI Gov. And lo and behold, in 1988, the FBI investigated Jack the Ripper, because obviously nobody had established at that point who Jack the Ripper was. So the FBI profilers, John Douglas and Roy Hazelwood, were given the task of doing a profile on Jack the Ripper. And I think they came to the conclusion that it could have been a guy called Aaron Kosminski. Let me make sure that's correct. So I don't want to give you some misinformation. So I'm just looking in the FBI vault. What is this? Jack the Ripper Part 1. I don't know, that's popular. Let's have a look. Let's see if there's anything in their files. Jack the Ripper subject. So there's actually, you can actually go onto the FBI vault page, and there's actually documents where they've actually investigated. I don't know how long this is. Let me see if it's got page 7. Just scrolling up. Don't know, maybe that's the final page, page 8. But anyway, so they did investigate Jack the Ripper, and they've probably done investigations into other things on the behalf of the British establishment. So why couldn't they do an investigation into the Lucy Letby case? Why couldn't they do an investigation? Because they've got a publication in America that has done a more thorough investigation than any publication in the UK. In fact, all the UK publications that have since done articles, more thorough articles about the case, have done it off the back of the article in the New Yorker. So why couldn't we get the FBI to investigate Lucy Letby? Why couldn't we write to the FBI and ask them to do an investigation? Why couldn't we, as the public, the British public, who are concerned that our police forces and our government and our courts are corrupt, why couldn't we write to the FBI and say to them, could you do an investigation based on the information available in the public domain? And maybe they could also make inquiries themselves with the police over here. And it's very important to America. I'll tell you why. Because one of the groups of foreigners that comes over to the UK the most is Americans. and sometimes Americans have unfortunate occurrences. Like there was an incident where an American, I think she was a diplomat, and she had an accident and she ran over a British person, and then she fled to America, and that created a very big political incident. And I think, our connections with America are very strong because I believe the American authorities eventually got her to come back over here and face the music. Or at least she had to face the music from America. I can't remember the full ins and outs of it, but certainly the Americans didn't let it drop. So our legal system is very much tied to the American legal system, very much tied to the American legal system. And I'm sure there's a lot more joint working between our investigative authorities and the American investigative authorities. Definitely where you look at the sort of CIA and MI5, MI6, I think there's a lot of links there. So why couldn't there be some links between the FBI and the police over here? Maybe Scotland Yard and the FBI work together on the Lucy Letby case and get to the crux of it. So this is my appeal. This is my appeal to the FBI. This sounds crazy. And I hope Operation Merlin Falcon will support what I'm saying and maybe do a video about it and explain to us whether the FBI would be the right people to be involved in doing their independent investigation into the Lucy Letby case. Because anything they find out, because I think they probably have the knowledge and the skills to and probably more independence, because they're not part of the British establishment, to arrive at a conclusion that would be less biased than anything that anyone in the UK could arrive at. So why don't we really push for the FBI to get involved in the Lucy Letby case? So this is literally my appeal to the FBI in America. Could you do us a favor? Could you actually look into the Lucy Letby case? Because we believe that there's been a bit of corruption going on in a number of establishments in the UK, and there's a lot of people in authority who are very keen for it to be covered up. And we want to get to the bottom of this. This is very important because people who come over to the UK from America will have to, at some point, engage with our justice system, will have to engage with our hospitals, our medical staff and medical establishments. And you want to be sure that when you come to the UK, you're being treated correctly, honestly, and fairly. And if we can't treat our own fairly, you've got no hope. So that's my appeal. I don't know what you people think about that, whether you think it's a good idea for the FBI to be involved in the Lucy Letby case. But you got to think of it from this point of view. Jack the Ripper was accused of killing 5 women, okay? Or was known to have killed 5 women. So if Lucy Letby is guilty of what she's accused of, then she's more prolific than Jack the Ripper. And if they're going to get involved in the Jack the Ripper case, then they should get involved in the Lucy Letby case. Now, the Lucy Letby wasn't the most prolific British serial killer. That honour or dishonour goes to Harold Shipman. But we don't know for certain how many people he killed. It could have been in the hundreds, but we don't know. And these were people at the end of their lives. So he wasn't looking for young people to kill. So yeah, just an idea, just a thought. So let me know your thoughts. As usual, please do like the video, share the video. Feel free to leave comments below. And if you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe. You shook me up, now stick around.
heartbeats racing as my love comes down. Oh, tonight's the night to put your hands on me.